Homemade corned beef is arguably the iconic Irish dish, but I feel it deserves more attention and love than just on St. Patrick's Day. This recipe for corned beef is an anomaly. It's not quite a braise, it's somewhere between a braise and a poach. Now, corned beef really is a brisket cut of beef, which is cured in a salt brine. 1 cup of salt, a half a cup of sugar, and a slightly unusual ingredient, 1 tablespoon of pink curing salt. This salt contains a very small percentage, about 6% of sodium nitrate. To be exact, 93% of salt. Pink salt can also be referred to as cell rose or curing salt. And the reason we're using this little bit of nitrate is to prevent bacterial growth. We're going to be curing the meat for about 2 weeks. It also helps keep the meat a nice color. Curing salt has been dyed pink so that butchers can tell the difference when they're preparing meat. You don't want a lot of it, but just that little bit will help. And I'm dissolving all those ingredients in 2 quarts of water. Bring it to a boil and it will make a nice salt solution. And then in a mortar and pestle, we're going to grind up 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns, 1 teaspoon of coriander seeds, 1 teaspoon of mustard seeds, 8 whole cloves. These are common spices. Cinnamon stick. This is a pretty hard one. And 4 dried bay leaves. What smells so good when you start to crush those spices. Now, it works very well. And if you don't have one of these, you could put it in a spice grinder. And now just add these to the water. Turn it off and cool it before you pour it over your cut of meat. And here we have a really beautiful piece of brisket. This is from the breast of the cow, and it is a really nice lean piece. And now we pour over that our brine. So this is going to stay in the brine. I like to put a piece of parchment on and 2 plates just to keep the meat underneath the liquid. You can wrap this very loosely with some plastic wrap and put in your refrigerator for 2 whole weeks, 14 days to be exact. So here's our corned beef. It's been taken out of the brine, it's been rinsed, and it's been put into a beautiful cast iron casserole, enameled cast iron, that is the perfect size to hold the meat. And now add cold water and peel a carrot, cut it in half, a peeled onion cut in half, and a stalk of celery. And these are added to the pot. Okay, so this now goes on the stove. So now I'm going to bring this to a boil and then reduce the heat to a simmer. Cover and let cook for 3 to 3.5 hours. Now, here's the meat after 3.5 hours. It does reduce in size, but it is tender and really beautiful, and it will be easy to slice if it stays here and rests. This is called tenting. A piece of parchment with a piece of foil over that. That'll keep it warm, and it will also let the beef rest. And now here we have the broth. The solids, the carrots, and the onions have been removed, and we are going to put into that broth, which is flavorful. I just tasted it. It is very good. 12 sprigs of parsley, 1 pound of red potatoes. Don't peel them. They go right into the liquid. And 1 whole head of cabbage. Now I've just trimmed the core. This is cut into wedges, and you can just place the wedges right in the liquid. So now bring this again to a boil, reduce to a simmer, and cook for about 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And then we're going to add a few more vegetables. So now the cabbage is cooked. It's nice and tender. The potatoes are tender. Add about a pound of white turnips. These have already been steamed separately, so they don't impart a whole lot of flavor to the broth, but they can absorb some of that flavor. And a pound of carrots, also steamed. So each vegetable has its own flavor, its own taste, but so pretty altogether. Now we can cut the meat. And I like to arrange the meat on a big platter like this. I like to serve the meat with grainy mustard, homemade beet horseradish. Oh, this is so good. And that's fresh horseradish, and sea salt. Nice, flaky sea salt. And here's the brisket. You always want to cut brisket against the grain. So you can use a fork if you like to hold it down and slice the meat a little less than 1/4 of an inch thick. Use a nice sharp knife, but look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh my gosh, this is so great. Arrange the vegetables as artfully as you can. So you see why you need a big platter? Yes, indeed. So this is a perfect meal for 8 to 9 people, I would say. Hungry people. So serve this corned beef with a warm rye bread like this and your condiments, and you will be a heroine or a hero. This hearty one-pot meal is so good that you'll be getting requests to make it all year long, not just on St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy. Irish soda bread is very easy to make and very delicious to eat, and I serve it every single St. Patrick's Day. So to 1 1/3 cups of whole milk, add 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. If you watch closely, the milk starts to bubble immediately and starts to curdle, to acidify. And into a big bowl, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure that it's fresh, hasn't expired, you haven't had it hanging around in your cupboard for a year. 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 2½ teaspoons of salt, and I'm using kosher salt. And you can whisk this together. And you can add another essential ingredient to this, and it's called coarse bran. This is the outer coating of the wheat. Comprises about 14% of the wheat by weight, and it is where a lot of the nutrition in the wheat berry is. And it adds a very nice flavor to the Irish soda bread. So we're making it healthier and better for you. So here's our dry ingredients, into which we cut 4 tablespoons of butter, and just cut your butter into the dry ingredients. It's a very easy 1 bowl bread. You want it to look like course meal, like you always say in the recipes, course meal. Let's see how the milk is doing. Oh my gosh, it is already curdled. It's like magic. It really works. And it's flavorful and fragrant. Now we're going to add to this our raisins, 1 cup of dark raisins for this recipe, but you can use golden raisins. Make sure I kind of pack in the raisins. I love raisins in this bread. So add your raisins, and you can do this by hand. And very important to have lots of caraway seeds. This is the essential ingredient for rye bread. It's an anise-flavored seed. 1/4 cup we're going to add. Gives a crunchiness and an extraordinary flavor to the soda bread. And then we're going to stir in the buttermilk. Your homemade buttermilk. And that's it. Really easy. Stir it in, moisten every particle of flour, but don't overwork. And I must tell you, the apple cider is very, very fragrant. And now on a lightly floured surface, form your ball of bread. Flour on the crust does not hurt. In fact, oftentimes if you buy soda bread, you'll see it's very white and floury. Use a bench scraper. Give it just 1 or 2 light kneads. And put this right on parchment-lined baking sheet. You can dust it with a little bit more flour on the top. Cut a big X in the surface of the bread. And pop this into your 350-degree preheated oven and set your timer for 1.25 hours. And now I think our Irish soda bread is done. It certainly looks done. Let it cool on a rack, and you can cut it while it's still slightly warm and serve it with Irish butter, or wait till it completely cools and give it to your friends. This is Irish soda bread. I'm making a beef barley soup. This is a delicious soup, especially wonderful in cold weather. And I'm browning 2 pounds of beef. It's good to use a beef shoulder, cut into 1/2-inch cubes. And I'm using, just about 1 tablespoon of clarified butter and 1 tablespoon of olive oil in which to brown the meat. And that's our first batch. Has a nice color to it. And here's the second batch. Just do this over kind of a medium-high heat. Use as lean beef as you can find. Oh, and don't forget to lightly season the beef with a little bit of salt and freshly ground black pepper. And while that's browning, I'll finish cutting up the vegetables. We have 3 carrots that are cut into 1/2-inch pieces. They're peeled. 3 parsnips that are also cut up into 1/2-inch pieces, and an assortment of mushrooms. We use about 1 pound of mushrooms, and you can cut these into quarters. This is the plain white button mushroom. If they are a little bit dark, take off the end of the stem. We have 2 onions that are also peeled and chopped. And let's see, let's use maybe a couple of these chanterelle. There's another one. These have been brushed clean. Here's some cremini, which are very nice color. Altogether, 1 pound. And there are some black trumpets. Those are kind of wonderful looking. Those 2 can be just chopped. There's a little purveyor of mushrooms in New York City called Marché Eau de Lis, and they have a beautiful selection of fresh mushrooms. Maybe a piece of this hedgehog. What exotic names for exotic wild mushrooms. Okay, that's good. Stir up the beef. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes to get the beef the right color. And we need also a little bouquet garni, just a little bit of thyme, a little rosemary, and 1 bay leaf, just tied in a little bouquet. And you also need 3/4 cup of pearl barley. This is what barley looks like. A very beautiful grain that gets a nice texture when it's cooked. Well, here I think our beef is dark enough, so we can add that to our other beef. And then brown the onions right in this same pan. Cook the onions until they are translucent and taking on a nice golden color. Good healthy soups are really very easy to make and quite a joy to make. The onions will start to sweat a little bit and exude a little bit of their own natural moisture, so you don't have to add any more butter or oil. If your stock is well flavored, then you don't have to really worry too much about adding salt or pepper until the soup is completely finished. Don't burn the onions. And now when you think the onions are done enough, you can add the meat back to the onions. And then pour in your stock. Let this simmer for approximately 1 hour. And then An hour before you want to serve the soup, add the rest of the vegetables, the barley, and the herb bouquet, and simmer for another hour. So if you're going to do this for your family or your friends, you can just bring the big hot pot of soup, this wonderful cauldron, to the table and serve it with a salad, a crusty French bread, a glass of hearty red wine, and you have a really healthy soup, a one-dish meal. Beef barley soup, and it's delicious. With just a few easy steps, these smashed potatoes are a cinch to make. These golden potatoes are crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside, and in my opinion, one of the best ways to enjoy potatoes. We've steamed the potatoes for the other recipes, but for this recipe, we are boiling them. And it only takes about 8 to 9 minutes for uniform potatoes such as these. Use potatoes that are no bigger than 1.5 inches across. And we're using white potatoes, which are really yellow-skinned. We're using red bliss potatoes, which are red-skinned. And we're using a little blue potato, which is purple-skinned. Inside the flesh is blue. And we put this in a pot of water that's over a high flame and bring to a boil and cook until the potatoes are soft to the point of a sharp knife. That's going to take somewhere about 8 to 9 minutes. You'll drain them and let them cool until they're not too hot to smash with the heel of your hand. Now we have some that are already done, so I can just proceed with the recipe. Oil a baking sheet like this with olive oil. And here's our potatoes. And you just take your hand like that and smash, just like that. A white one, a purple one, and here's a red one. And these can be put quite close on the baking sheet. They're not going to grow or expand or do anything like that. And just, they look like little flowers, kind of smashed flowers on the baking sheet. And they heat in the oven so nicely, they roast now. And if they're too hot, use a little towel, a little piece of towel over the potato. But it's better, I think, to let them cool enough so that you can handle them. Now, there's just 2 pounds of potatoes here. They should all fit on this baking sheet. And then just sprinkle a little tiny bit more olive oil on the tops. Sprinkle with a little bit of salt and pepper and some thyme leaves. Put them in a 425 preheated oven and roast for, about 25 minutes. Now just strip the leaves off the stems and sprinkle, making sure that each potato has a little bit of thyme on it. So there, these go straight into your oven. Now you could substitute rosemary or parsley if you prefer those herbs to thyme, but I love potatoes and thyme. "25 minutes, 425. So you can arrange these on a serving platter. You can just dump them on a serving platter if you like, but I think they're so pretty that they should be treated with tenderness. And these are so crispy and pretty. During the baking, you can turn them over. These were turned over once, but you can see the different colors. And you can serve these plain like this, or if you like, with a dollop of sour cream and sprinkle with chopped chive. Now that is a pretty platter of smashed potatoes.